Welcome back, all you Point 3 people, to another exciting episode of the Point 3 podcast. We are excited to have you back here with two of the three of the trio. Spider Brando is out doing his thing right now on vacation. But we are here once again to discuss the latest happenings in the newest hit in cinema today. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing Godzilla Minus One. And just a quick heads up, we are not going to be holding back. So this is your official spoiler warning. Listen, we want to hear from you all. So join the conversation over on our social medias at the Point 3 Podcast. Drop your thoughts if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening, wherever. Let us know what you thought of this movie. But without further ado, Hero Scroll. What are we talking about today?
Godzilla Minus One, a movie that both of us, since we saw it, have not been able to stop thinking about it. We have not been able to stop talking about it.
Oh no.
I knew because I saw it a day before you did. The minute I came out of that theater, I was like, we have to talk about this here.
Yeah.
Because it deserves it. And I think you felt the same way after. So before we jump into it fully, though, the full review, we kind of wanted to give you guys a quick little, asterisk addendum to last week's live stream that kind of broke down more the box office and the Eastern versus like Western influence of Godzilla. So this review is not going to be about that. If you want that part of it, go watch our live stream from December 6th. That will have all of that. But just to kind of give you guys an updated box office number, it earned an extra about 8 million. So raising its domestic box office to 25.3 million, which accounts to 48.8% of its revenue. Its international 26.6, which is 51.2, giving it a worldwide of 51.9. From last week to this week, there was also a theater jump, which is almost unheard of in today's days, where they got more theaters. From the first weekend, 2,308 theaters. This past weekend, 2,540, about an extra 200 and odd number. And one more quick little blurb. Take it as you will. In a interview at Tokyo Comic-Con, they essentially brought up to the director of the film, Takashi Yamazaki, about the budget, saying about the $15 million price point that it had on it. And all he said was, I wish it were that much. Keep that in mind as we talk about some of the things that we're going to end up talking about later on.
Yeah. Epic.
How many movies do that today?
I don't know how many movies do anything that you just said. Like, it is unprecedented territory and territory that's been explored in 2023.
Yeah.
Which how many times do we hear, like, everything's been done, right? Stuff can't be new. Stuff can't be original.
This movie's doing a lot of those things and then some. That's why we're going to start off with the thing that is maybe not so new, but in some ways still new in terms of the review. We're going to kind of break it down into two aspects. That's going to be Godzilla and then the people. Surprisingly, people in this movie are just as, if not more interesting than Godzilla at certain points in this film. But we want to talk about Godzilla because in the interviews that we've seen, right, in some specific interviews, for example, the director has come out and talking about how Shin Godzilla, the 16 or 17 Japanese film that came out before this one, where Godzilla has a lot more of a creepier design, right? They intentionally wanted to go away from that. They wanted to give you the cool factor. And what's immediate, and I think we both picked this up very, very quickly. I think even my little nephew, when we watched it, because he was there with us, when Godzilla first comes up on screen, he looks like a dinosaur. Obviously, taking reference from the infamous 1999 version. So my nephew was like, look, a dinosaur. When he saw it, he wasn't scared, but he just said, look, a dinosaur. But then after he evolves because of the atomic bomb, he becomes a lot closer to the newer version that I think everybody knows.
Yeah.
And that plays a huge part as throughout this whole film.
Yeah, it's interesting coming into it from obviously knowing Godzilla from a Western perspective. Uh, look matters, right? Looks
Yeah.
matter.
Oh, for
And for
sure.
anyone to say that, oh, looks don't matter, it's just a good story. No, this movie is a very complete movie. And this is a massive box that has to be checked. And I think that's one of the things that potentially held Shin Godzilla back a little bit is the look wasn't for everyone and people it kind of kept a little more of that just like this feels like a joke in a way
Yeah.
in some ways, but the look that they had of Godzilla after he evolved and was really nuked up, if you will, um, the design is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Because to that point about Shin Godzilla, I see a lot of people talk about like the first, and I think it's towards the end of the movie where he's trying to go into his like fourth form, I think it is,
Yeah,
where it's like the little humanoid. And a lot of people either like that or hate that. They're very much like, no, that's kind of stupid. Why would they ever do that? It takes away the physicality and like intimidation factor. But this one takes all the cool things about the Godzilla that we kind of know and love over here and just find a way to make it horrifying where I think one of the big things is the fact of like the spikes on his back
yeah,
where here he has those, right? The Western Godzilla of the Monsterverse does have them, but here they're a lot more jagged. They're everywhere. They're kind of like coming out at different angles. None of them are straight. And his face is genuinely, he looks menacing. He doesn't look the entire body looks cool, but when you really focus in on the face, which a lot of these shots do, he looks terrifying.
he does, and you get that sense of like when I look at him, I couldn't really figure it out until I went back and read some things that you've put together and some articles and just really seeing like what was the design language behind it. But you find out very quickly everything in this movie has a purpose. And Godzilla going from T-Rex on Oda Island to the Godzilla that we saw that ultimately makes it to the end of the movie, when you get up close, he looks burned, he looks scarred, he looks jagged. He looks as if an atomic bomb was set off and it scorched earth and all the rubble is on his back. And that's what makes up his scales and what's pointy and all this. Every which direction, the houses are destroyed, all that kind of stuff. Like he looks like a walking fallout
Yeah.
from
A
the
hun-
war ravaged post World War II Japan.
100%. 100%. And I think the next biggest thing after that we're gonna have to kind of just jump right into this scene because I think it's the scene that a lot of people are talking about. The atomic breath scene or the atomic ray scene. Man, when that came on screen, it is genuinely one of the most horrifying things, one of the most horrifyingly beautiful things I've seen in film. Because yes, it's cool, but it's genuinely scary to see it.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
struck fear into people.
100%. Dude, I literally texted you at the moment where after
Yeah.
it happened, I was just like, it was almost a speechless moment. And the way that it was impactful in terms of like, you always remember seeing those videos of like nuclear bomb testing and people put the goggles on and you see the house get blown away. And like the way that they did it of Godzilla to the colors, to the explosion, to the mushroom cloud, to the fallout, and like the pressure that came from this and just ravaged the city and then
Yeah.
pulls you all the way back to you're just like, how can anything survive this?
Yeah.
Like mass destruction.
Yeah. And again, the cool thing is that they really give you that sense of power
Yeah.
in the fact that this is just something no one can handle, right? Where you look at even something like Shin Godzilla, whose atomic ray scene I think is still really, really good. But you look at even that beam and it's more cutting, right? It's more
Yeah, yeah,
slashing,
yeah.
and the explosions come from the fact that things are being slashed. And then you look at the monsterverse, and it kind of just bounces off the monster. It's hitting them, but it bounces off of them. Here, it's more this is if he fires this, you are done. And you see that twice in the film. You see it when he shoots up at the ship from the bottom of the sea, and you see this specifically in Ginza when he comes back out and starts rampaging.
It's an interesting take on his atomic ray personally, because I think for us from a Western standpoint, it's almost it's I this is the only time I'm going to drop this, but it's almost like a protecting your finisher type of thing in wrestling,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When it is used, it is a massive problem, and you need to do whatever you can at all costs so he doesn't use it. But the crazy thing to think is, like, how do you stop him?
Yeah.
Like, when Godzilla decides this is the time to do it, he winds up and it's like the draw. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm sure if you're watching this, you've seen the scene in trailers kind of, or maybe some clips, but like the build up to this of like scale,
Yeah.
scale, 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 bam. And it is just terrifying. Terrifying that if one of these goes off, like it's hopeless. They made Godzilla feel, as an audience member, I felt very hopeless.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
like, I just don't know.
Yeah. He genuinely felt unbeatable. Like he felt like something that could not be toppled by anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
In
even go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say from that standpoint too of like, this is his origin in a way,
Yeah.
and what a way to establish him as the ultimate threat.
Yeah. 100%. Because even in the final battle, if you really think about the final battle in this movie, nothing goes wrong for them.
Right.
They execute their plan to near perfection, as perfect as they can get it given the circumstances. And he still gets up.
Mm-hmm.
And if not for Koichi at the end coming in, being the ace of this movie,
Right.
literally and figuratively, they were done. And I think they all resigned themselves to it when he's charging up the death beam or the atomic ray, and then he just like hunches over. They know they're done.
Yep.
There's nothing.
That's it. That hopeless feeling surfaces again. And it's such a good way to make him, because again, he is the main antagonist of this movie, right? But he's not, oh, Godzilla's gonna save us King Kong style, like,
Yeah.
no, Godzilla's here to destroy.
Yeah.
And we can get into that a little bit more of how they differentiate what that really means in this movie
Yeah.
when we get to the human element of things. But it's almost like one of those, like it's a prize fighter and you're like, okay, we have a plan to take down Goliath. We've had prep. We know that hypothetically this is what we have to do. And if we get it through plan A and even plan B, based on what we know, we can win.
Yeah.
And when you just exhaust that and you give your best shot, there's nothing that's held back. You put it all out on the line, and Godzilla's still like, nah.
No.
It's just like, oh my, like, we need a miracle at this point. But I think hands down, I think it's safe to say this is head and shoulders the best adaptation of Godzilla I have ever seen. And I'm talking going all the way back to the 50s, talking about new, uh the looks, the sounds. Oh my gosh.
The sounds. Even, and that's what I was going to get to next. Even the way he roars doesn't sound cool anymore. It sounds more ethereal in some ways, where it
Oh
it,
yeah.
it sounds out of this world. And we're definitely going to get to that because this is very, very intentional
Mhm.
on the design. And I think the roar is part of that, but it doesn't sound natural. Even, again, going back, comparing it to the Monsterverse and all the other roars we've seen, you can kind of understand what it is. It's this beast just from the bottom of its lungs. But here, he doesn't feel like that. He feels like something else entirely.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it, because his roar feels as impactful as the original score did in this. Of like, it wasn't a roar just to roar.
Yeah.
like his call outs, although they paid homage to a lot of sounds that have carried on throughout the decades, you do, and again we'll get to it, but it feels like it's a greater being. It's not just like I'm in the jungle and I hear something roaring for defend or announcing that it's here. It's just like it's very awe-inspiring. Like I could totally understand in this movie how you can just sit here and people would be shaking you and they're like, come on, we have to go. And you're just like, I'm just frozen because I'm in awe of this creature, this organism that is truthfully godlike.
Yeah. And I mean, we can definitely just jump into it. You look at the soundtrack, and the soundtrack definitely plays into this more. Um, but the atomic ray scene, the song that I think is played, is called Divine. And when you listen to it, it is like a very melodic, like horns, organs,
Yep.
the vocals. But then it gets increasingly haunting, increasingly scary to the point where then once he shoots it, it's just done. And they portray that so well in the film where people stop running from
Mm-hmm.
him. And you would think that they would keep going, but they don't. And you might think that that's kind of a flaw, but the more you think about it, it's more they don't know what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't know what he's doing, and they just the only thing that their bodies is allowing them to do in this moment is sit there and watch as these spikes come out. It's glowing, it's beautiful, but then it ultimately just leads to them being decimated.
Yeah. And they give you a lot of perspectives of him, especially during that city scene when it's Ginza.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh I was gonna bring this up a little bit later, but that coupled with the cinematography, the angles that they use, how they're not afraid to get up close to Godzilla and show off how he looks. Cause I think that's something, especially in
Yes.
lower budget films. Let's pan out, let's keep it far away, let's keep it to scale so we don't really expose a lower budget type of
Yeah.
character that's used through technology. Like they got up close and they laid it on you. And you got perspective from the characters, you got perspective from some of the main characters, and then perspective really from kind of Godzilla itself. But it all just blends into a moment that I don't think we've ever gotten or that I can think of. And I've been thinking about this a lot, like your
Yeah.
scroll mentioned in the beginning. Uh, just a commitment
Yeah.
top to bottom for a moment like that to solidify it as one of the best moments we probably have ever gotten in cinema.
Yeah. 100%. Because you felt it in the theater. I don't
100%.
know. My theater, there was definitely a shift in tone when that scene happens, both for the movie and the theater, where it now becomes a lot of people realize, oh,
It's
there's
serious.
nothing they can do. Like this is bad.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't cool anymore. It wasn't fun to watch. It was just
Yeah.
kind of scary.
Yeah. And that's
And
the right there to that point. I said this to you beforehand. I haven't been in a theater that has been this mixed diverse and that full in a very long time.
mhm,
And the control that this movie had over the crowd of when something like that happens, it's quiet. You
yeah,
don't hear anything. That moment is sinking in for people to be like, "Oh my."
yeah,
It's not did that really just happen? It was this just happened. No
yeah,
question about it.
yeah. And part of that, I think, is contributed to the fact of how the director really meant Godzilla to feel like an undiscerning god,
Mhm.
somebody who just was wiping people out. Because you in they don't specifically show it, but in the city you just see men, women, and children,
Yep.
animals. You see all of it. If you look real close, he's decimating all of them. There is no distinction between who's a good
Right.
person, who's a bad person. If you are there and you just so happen to be in the path of destruction, you're dead.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too where I think we've gotten pretty used to Godzilla making decisions of like, I'll give you an example in Monarch. It's a scene that I don't like, but Godzilla is attacking San Francisco. The main character is standing on the street, and the rubble broke right in front of her, but somehow she's alive. And Godzilla's walking through, and Godzilla doesn't look anywhere, but Godzilla takes a moment to look directly at her. And it's like, oh, I have this connection with Godzilla,
Yeah.
or Godzilla chose to spare me, or something like that.
Yeah.
Not in this movie. He is walking annihilation. There is no discrimination. It's almost like Godzilla is the character in this that is not taking retribution on humanity, but kind of in a way of like, you guys essentially poison the water. He comes from the water. You use your atomic bombs. Like, this is a direct result of your not having care,
Yeah.
of being inconsiderate of other people, of being of really not caring about life and how fragile it really is. It's how powerful can I be? And Godzilla's like, this is how powerful you are. You're not.
Yeah.
You know, and it just power. This is such a god. This Godzilla is one of the best displays of raw power, true annihilation, and just I don't know if we've seen anything like this, and it felt genuine. It felt
Yeah.
real from beginning to end.
Yeah. No one's telling you that he's scary.
No.
It's all shown and
Show.
in,
All
in
show.
genuine, meaningful ways. Like it isn't
Yeah.
a oh look at that, wow, yeah, scary. No, it's shown to you directly. And again, I think going back to that point of what you're saying, how he's something just bigger than things that people understand. Again, the director, going to a quote that he said in an interview with The Verge, he said, "I wanted Godzilla to feel like the physical embodiment of a kind of negative energy tied to people's fears, worries, and disillusionment. We humans were not necessarily here to kill Godzilla. We're there to calm him. Minus One is about putting a name and face to something scary and inviting the audience to calm that negative presence through the shared experience of watching the film." That's a strong mission statement for your film and for the monster of this film when you start to think about it. And I think they did such a good job of really capturing that essence, of really making this feel like a shared experience where, at least for me, I felt like I was there with them. Like I
Oh
was
yeah.
rooting for these characters to make it out and win and do something.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too far into the human element of this, but I think we had mentioned it of like, I typically want, or Godzilla, you know, you want him to stand tall at the end of the day, stand on the monster's neck and roar, and then shoot an atomic ray into
Yeah.
the sky, and everyone's like, "That's my guy," type of thing,
Yeah,
you
there
know.
we
Where it's like,
go.
yeah, uh, this is by far the only time I've been like, "You need to stop him.
Yeah.
Godzilla cannot continue on. If he does, here we go. Here we go, anime fans. Here we go. For those of you who are Attack on Titan fans, this is probably the closest thing I can say to what it felt like when a Titan shows up the first time.
Yeah.
And when they try to figure it out. Sans technology in a way, but it's very reminiscent of, if you step foot in front of him or you are in his proximity, your chances of survival are nil. And they did enough in this movie for me, and I think you as well, and a lot of people that saw this, to make you root for the humans because of their journey that they had. And when you get to that end point, are we going to talk about that yet, or do you want to save what happens at the end for the end?
We can say it and then we can go back to it. Yeah.
You did kind of mention it when he's about to launch that last atomic ray, and you know, Koichi comes in with the plane and he's like, bam, right in the mouth and all that kind of stuff, and he ejecto seatso. You do kind of feel of like that should be it, and then they do it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like you can breathe for now.
Yeah.
I didn't felt like we could breathe forever, but I feel like we could breathe for now.
Yeah.
And then obviously at the end, we get the thing. They threw hints out that he can regenerate, which I think is a very cool, very, very cool way to continue Godzilla on.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take more. That wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And again, he just doesn't stay down. What is it going to take?
Yeah. And again, that goes to the fact of how they make him feel something more than natural.
Yeah.
Where the monsterverse, they tell you he's a titan. He's been
Mhm.
here. He's basically part of the earth, right? Part of whatever they call it in the monsterverse,
Mhm.
their realm, right? The when they immediately say that, you now know that no, he can be killed.
Mhm.
He can be. He's just not, because he's just too strong. Like, he's just unbeatable. However, this Godzilla feels more than that, because the ending scene is impactful, because yeah, they win, but for how long? When
Yeah.
will he be back? We don't know. It could be 10 years, it could be 2 months, it could
Yeah.
be a couple days, it could be 40 years, you know? Who knows when he'll show back up and how long it'll take him to regenerate. But that goes back to making him feel like something that is just unnatural.
Mhm.
He's unnatural because not only is he fused with the power of the atomic bomb, but they don't really know what he is.
Don't know where he is. Kind of know where he came from, but not really. I mean, they're kind of on things, but not. But again, like trying to figure him out, they were always in a ballpark and they made some really good best guesses.
Yeah.
Well, he's a monster from the deep sea. Like, why do you want to drag him all the way down? Like, is that really going to work? And they're like, we don't have a choice. We have to try. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then the same thing you said with time, that level of unpredictability with this specific Godzilla, I look forward to a part 2 to this. I don't even want to say like a sequel, a part 2. It's a continued story. The story
Yeah.
is going to go on and I hope it does. It can. Um Without doing much. His presence is going to be earth-shattering
Yeah.
if when he shows up wherever he shows up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
And the more I think about it, the more I finally realize where as we're talking through it, I finally realize what the face looks like to me.
mm,
And it might just be me, but I kind of realized that in other Godzilla adaptations, they don't really have humanoid looking eyes. In here, he has very human eyes and very human, obviously monstrous, but human teeth. He feels like the old Japanese Oni masks.
ah,
That again makes him feel like something
yeah.
beyond what should be normal. And that I think that just adds so much more to him as the antagonist, as this monster of a character.
That's a good point. I mean, there's a lot they can take that in a really nice direction to again just add to the lore of this new Godzilla that's been created
Yeah.
and just his legend, right? The legend of Godzilla and kind of small pieces to this. I know maybe we're going to move to the next part, but
Yeah.
it was very interesting to me to see how when Godzilla was put on the radar, how they still held true to real times and the political landscape that was existing. Like Godzilla is fitting into a post World War II like era,
Yeah.
but they didn't abandon that for the sake of Godzilla.
Yeah.
The U.S., I mean, quite powerful at this time, as we know.
Yeah.
uh, they didn't help.
No.
They weren't doing anything. They had the Soviet US tensions that were going on, the precursor to the Cold War and all that kind of stuff. The government, the Japanese government was hands off. They gave bare bones to these people. And it's just like, you think of some of these stories, or even like a Shin Godzilla, where you have kind of that bureaucracy, the groups, the scientists. You have a lot of these people that are invested in Godzilla. They took that away in this movie. you still had some, but it was like the baseline bottom of the barrel versions of all these larger groups that typically are always associated with Godzilla from a human aspect.
Yeah.
Some military made sense, a scientist, handful of ships, no technology. Like they shifted away from that. They said, hey, it's on our radar, but guess what? We can't do anything. You guys don't really have much that's worth saving anyways. Like, didn't your country just get ravaged by war? Like, you're
Yep.
damaged goods. We don't care about you. We don't care about these people. We're going to work over here and, well, you guys figure it out. I thought that was an extremely interesting dynamic to place into this that ultimately can set up for future Godzilla storylines to be like, you didn't think that Godzilla was a problem. Godzilla is a problem. And what military strength you think you have, you don't.
You don't. Yeah. They show that so many times throughout this film. Decimates tanks like nothing, throws an entire battleship
Yeah.
very hard.
Yeah.
It becomes something where he's used as a device to really unite the people again in a time where they're kind of disjointed, and
Yeah.
we can kind of move on into the human aspect of it where when Koichi comes out of the war, right, and on his first attack with Godzilla, he is shunned by people. He's shunned by Tachibana, who's the engineer who or the technician who survived the first attack in Oda Island, I think it was, or
Yes.
Odo Island.
Yes.
He's blamed by Sumiko.
Yeah.
For the death of her children. She blames him directly multiple times, tells him that, he's basically trash and deserved to die, that he should have died. But yet, despite all of this, it brings all of them back together.
Yes. Yes. And that's interesting to know that they showcase a group of people who are willing to rally for a common cause and a common enemy. But at the foundation of that is, let's throw life at it to fix the problem. But that solution equals death. And by the end of the movie, you get the flip side of that in a full 180 that we need to put people on this, but it's to preserve life.
Yeah.
And also preserve it while we're going through and implementing our solution to stop the common enemy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really, really cool scene that kind of puts that on full display of when they're kind of, they're announcing the plan and they're just like, listen, we're not military. We're not getting any military involvement. This is a government project. Like, this is for the people. And it's up to the people. Like, no one's holding you here. So leave if you want. People are like, I have families. I have families. And you have people that leave because they have a family. And then you have people that understand the magnitude of the situation. And they're like, I'm going to fight for my family because if I don't, no one is. It's the people in this room that are going to have to step up. Someone has to do it. I think someone mentioned that. And I don't think it was a named character, but there was a guy that's like, haha, like someone has to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Why not us?
Yep. He's the I think he's the first one that volunteers after a lot of people start leaving. And the cool thing is that normally in movies they would make you kind of look at them as the bad guy, the people that left. You would kind of make you look at them as like cowards in a way, but this film doesn't make you do that. It doesn't look at them through that lens. It looks at them as like reasonable people who they've already given up their life. A lot of them. And the Navy admiral that is there, he basically acknowledges that. He's like, I know what you guys have had to do and suffer through already. And I know it's selfish to ask you again to do it, but we need you.
Yeah.
And when they're like, well, do we have to? And he's like, no. No one looks at them bad. Right. No one admonishes them for leaving.
Right.
They just look at them as humans, which is, I think, a very nice and refreshing take on on that perspective of like a final battle and people leaving.
Yeah, and I think what helps is where you have Godzilla who tells this story to make uh, a lot of points in this movie, plot points, themes, tone, all that kind of stuff. It balances very nicely. Shikishima has a fantastic story as a
Mm.
main character in this. It was like a dance with his character of, I mean, they kind of double down on it of like, this is my war by the end of this, but like, I shouldn't be alive. People are telling me I shouldn't have lived. I was supposed to die, but I didn't want to die. I almost died again, and I thought, I want to live, but do I deserve to live? And I shouldn't be living because I don't deserve to live because I didn't die trying to save people so that they had life. And it's just this dance that he does mentally throughout the entire movie. And as you introduce more characters to this story and ultimately Godzilla, you have a beautiful culmination of, I was this and now I am this.
Mm-hmm.
And I have purpose and my decisions carry value. My life carries value. And it's important for me to survive because now I have a responsibility for more life.
Yeah.
Akiko being one of those. And there's a great twist at the end of, took me by surprise.
Me too. 100%. 100%. Yeah, his story is so, it's so good because again it does the ebbs and flow of a story really well. But it also in reality he's always had the thing that he's looking for.
Mm,
It's just been clouded by the fact of war.
yeah.
Like his parent, the main thing that when it's very small, and I don't think a lot of people caught it, but ultimately part of the reason that he doesn't go through with his kamikaze is that his mother sends him a letter and tells him live at all
Mm-hmm.
costs,
Mm-hmm.
live. So he fights for that, but I don't think he really realizes that that's what he's fighting for. He's fighting for that life too, that he wants to see them again because he loves them. Um, so much so that again, the main actor, uh, Ruyosuke. Sorry if I butchered that name, but in an interview, he said, in relation to Shikishima, the question is, if this is important to me, then how do I fight Godzilla?
Mm-hmm.
And he's always coming from a place of wanting to protect people. But is it because he wants to protect them, or is it because he regrets everything that he's done?
Right.
And they balance that so well
Right.
through so many points in the film.
Right. And that balance of like, for me, and I think this is a quote that you had put out there of um the director, I forget his name, so sorry. But essentially he wanted to tell a story about perseverance and bravery from the perspective of people who were at the bottom in a society that was dealing with the devastation of feeling like they had lost everything during the war, right? That balance of bravery. It's brave to make the decision to not go through with your kamikaze orders.
100%.
And they show that. And that doesn't end at the beginning when he returns to a ravaged Tokyo. You even get that with Tachibana when he's trying to find him after he finds that new plane, that ace plane, where he's like, I know that there's someone who can do this, but he has to face that. Like the things that he has to do and the decisions that he made, he is a very, very strong character. And I think it's easy to look at a character like that and be like, this guy's so weak.
100%. And that was going to be kind of the next point that I wanted to bring up, where you look at him at first glance, people are like, oh, he's a coward. He, even though we know that in reality a kamikaze pilot is a wrong thing, a generally accepted wrong thing, he felt like a coward.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time, where it was something more noble to save people from this monster, he cowered out again.
Yeah.
And it seems like he was going to cower out again later on. But he didn't. But just to kind of give you guys a small look into kamikaze pilots, we did some research on it. And props to the director for making this a trait about him without giving you much explanation, but still feeling the weight and impact of it. And when you finally realize and do some research and look at the things that he had to go through, it shapes him more, even more as a character than he already is. So, for example, Kamikaze, a lot of the pilots, the average age of them was 17 to 22. That's young. That is
Mhm.
incredibly young. That is younger than both of us.
Mhm.
Um, it was romanticized. The government would lie about it, that it was like a good thing. Going back to the indoctrination almost of like Bushido time, where you needed to die with
Yeah.
honor.
Yes.
You
Yes.
needed to. That's how you get into their version of like afterlife and
Mhm.
living with honor and honoring everybody else, right? But when you look at the training that they had, it was rough. It was incredibly rough because their training, not only was it hard as a military training, part of their routine was corporal punishment, essentially beatings. This training sometimes would last as long as 2 months. So think about that, daily beatings for 2 months. One soldier, and again, this is all real life, Daikichi Irokawa, who was trained as a pilot, said that he was struck in the face so hard and so frequently that his face was no longer recognizable.
Mhm.
That's honestly insane. And they were also given a manual that they had to read that was essentially telling them all the things they needed to do to be ready to go through with what they were assigned to do. And you think about the fact that he went through all this already. He saw this horrors, more than likely made friends with a lot of these guys around his same age who more than likely they did go through with what
Mhm.
with the the attacks. How many friends did he lose? In reality, pointlessly, because as we know in real life, these attacks didn't do anything. They didn't really have the effect that the Japanese government thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the fact that if you come back, you are dishonorable.
Dishonorable. Exactly. And it's and for some people to see that of being like, yeah, but at least he's alive for this culture that's almost worse than death.
Yeah, 100%.
And not knowing what he has to go back to and ultimately having that surprise of being shocked that his entire city has been leveled by, and Hero Scroll, you had pointed this out. Actually, if you want to give a quick background on that, that's something that I think is really cool that a lot of people miss.
Yeah. So the scene where he goes back to his hometown where his parents were, from the kind of context clues that they give, saying that it's Tokyo, it seems to be that it's a part of the bombings in Japan, which happened in around March of 1945, which again was kind of the closing period of the war, but was also when the kamikaze attacks ramped up. But a sad tidbit about this is that those bombings were the most devastating bombing raids in human history. I think about 100,000 estimated dead from that, and over 1 million people homeless because of this. So he goes back to that. Like, he doesn't get to go home to something happy. He has to go home to that and losing his parents.
Yeah, so much to deal with, and the way that the actor who played Shikishima, he portrayed each of these moments as time went on of struggling with that regret and struggling with the, I don't want to say manipulation, but kind of what the wartime and really did in preparation for ultimately going through with your ultimate kamikaze mission. He has so much to balance. But isn't it crazy to stop and think about for a second of like, he saw what happened on the island when Godzilla attacked first and was frozen, right? You
Mm,
saw that kind of PTSD every time he kind of put his hand on one of the machine guns.
yeah.
Uh, there's just so much to deal with, and really, I would be very curious to see his reaction to know that Godzilla is still alive.
Yeah, I'd hope that at least for his story, if they continue this in a part two, I'd rather hope that he gets to live his life out
I know.
because
I
I feel
know.
like he deserves it at this point where he's gone through that journey. I'd rather him be like an old man and Godzilla attack in a different area away from him. Because I
I
think that would affect him a little more than it would affect him a little more, but also give him his flowers and allow him to just kind of ride off into the sunset a little bit.
it's enough of a story, and he's been through so much that it feels very complete for him, and it was a roller coaster ride. I would be fine either way, personally, but I almost feel like it could be that continuation of him feeling like I just don't get a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like the dead are not done with me. Like, what have I done? What is my ultimate mission? Because even still, he got to that point in this movie though. Of like,
Yeah.
I'm maybe to end my war it is a kamikaze
Yeah.
attack in a way. And he grappled with that.
Yeah.
And it was the only way to do it is to get something inside of his mouth. And they call back to when he first saw Godzilla on the boat, and there was the mine in Godzilla's mouth, and he was good at what he does. Let's just say that for a second.
Yeah.
By no means is Shikishima a slouch,
No.
or he just wasn't good enough to make the cut. He is fantastic. The pilot, the flying scene, shout out to the anime, like Godzilla, and just the flying, the scenes, like how close he would get, his ability to maneuver. He just was stone cold once he was in there, and he's just
Yeah.
like, I gotta get it done. And for a split second, I was just like, I don't know if he's gonna make the decision to eject.
Yeah. Which again goes so well into this movie where they make you doubt it. Like, I think everybody kind of knew what Tachibana told him, that there was an eject button.
Yeah.
I think everybody kind of knew that. It was more of, is he gonna do it? Is it, and if he does do it, is it gonna work?
Right.
Like,
Oh, dude, that was my thing. That was my thing. I was
Yeah.
stuck on. Is it gonna work? I got to that point. I was like, okay, it's coming. Like plan A and B are done. They didn't work, but is plan C going to work? And does he really get this ending that makes you feel positive? Or is it just like a crap, bam,
Yeah. Which would have been sad, but I think the elation, at least the elation that I felt when he did get out of it, and when he's parachuting down from a distance,
Yeah.
I think is genuinely one of the happiest moments in any movie.
Yes.
The fact that it's like, yes, he made it out. And I think they show it perfectly through everybody else's eyes when they kind of mourn him for a second, but then they're like, they see him and they just burst into tears, dude. Burst, all of them. No shame as men to cry.
Yeah. He quite the turn of events from the beginning of when he made a decision and he was shunned for it, to now he again has the opportunity to make a decision, but he chooses life, and he's celebrated for doing that.
Yeah. And I like that Tachibana kind of serves as that gateway, or as that segue into that decision where he's haunted by it. And both him and Tachibana, they're essentially the same person, haunted by what happened that day, being the only survivors and having that survivor's guilt. But Tachibana more for the fact is more spiteful towards him, even as far as telling him you needed to die, like you should have.
Yeah.
And giving him the pictures of the people that were there and their families. He has to live with that, and we know he does because he kept it this entire time. And I think even Tachibana was kind of surprised when he pulls it out at the end, when he gets into the plane
Yep.
and he pulls them out,
Yep.
you kind of notice that he's a little, I don't know what the word is, like perturbed or just, I guess shaken is the best word. He's surprised that he kept that, and he kind of realizes, okay, he did take this seriously.
Yeah, but also I think he got insight because he didn't really take the time to really understand who Shikishima was, and he thought he was a coward. He thought that he was a good for nothing no one who abandoned his post, and if he didn't, maybe they could have, almost very like opposite side of Sumiko, how she kind of was just like, we would have won if you would have stayed here and done what you did. And Tachibana is like, if you just would have pulled the trigger like I told you to, and they made that reference of like a 20 millimeter machine gun. It can go through anything, right? It could
Yeah.
have killed Godzilla. We know it wouldn't have.
Would it though? Because it's, I think that's the interesting thing about this movie, where it's like, maybe.
I interpreted it as, regardless, Godzilla's outer exterior shell armor, whatever it might be, is enough to withstand that, even though what they were using on the boat was a 13 instead of a 20.
Yeah.
But they made it a point to make it like, once you get inside Godzilla, right, you have
Yeah.
to bypass that armor or that shell or that exterior exo, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it might have. I mean, do I think that it could have slowed him down? Yeah, but then when you saw him just wrecking everything and he scooped the
Yeah.
plane up and just smashed it, I was just like, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I will look at it as, and we'll research this and see what they say, but I'd say no, regardless. It wouldn't
Yeah.
have killed Godzilla, but it could have hurt him. And then once he scales up, he's taken nuclear bombs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fact that he did survive it and it mutated him instead of just disintegrating him.
Yeah.
I don't know. But no, just going back to the parallels of Tachibana and just knowing who Shikishima was and just how much baggage he was carrying. And then you have kind of the next point of that is the friend, who's the guy on the boat, the captain, not Noda, but
Akitsu? Yeah.
yeah,
Yoji Akitsu?
in the way that he was saying like, oh, this isn't your family, like, why are you not marrying this girl, why do you not care about this child, why do you not want a life and a family and all of these things, like your life is good now at a time when things aren't great, like you have an opportunity to grasp, why don't you want to take it? And again, getting more insight into just this internal struggle that he's having to ultimately choose worthiness, life and
Yeah.
death. It's
Yeah.
I mean, that was massive at that point. I am not worthy of having a good life because they didn't get a chance to have life. And I think he mentions that to Tachibana after he kind
Yeah.
of, they
Mm-hmm.
had their little scuffle of just like, they should be alive, right? And it's because of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I we can go on about the humans, and again, just props to this movie for making you care about every single one, really maximizing the time that each one has. Where Noriko, I would say, maybe has like maybe the least out of all of them, because she gets written halfway throughout. She
Yeah.
gets written off till the very end, where we do find out she's alive. Obviously, I think with the unfortunate side effect of nuclear sickness. And I did see some people kind of talk about how they wish
Yeah.
she didn't have that, but I think there can still be a happy ending despite that. I think everybody at this point kind of knew that that was the thing, especially having 2 years post the war. They
Mm-hmm.
knew about nuclear sickness, or they knew that something related to it happens. But I think the fact that she's even alive at least gives Koichi the ability to tell her how he feels and
Sure.
not live with the regret of never having been given the chance
Yeah.
and never at least giving it a shot with her.
Yeah.
Even if she does die in, not long after, he at least gave her, he at least got to say what he wanted to her.
Yeah, and I think that goes both ways because again, she made that massive save in the city and pushed him into the alleyway and just took it like an absolute champ.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's key for him to not only be able to express but receive post
Yeah.
expression. He finally got that with some friends, right? He got that with Tachibana. Like, there's some closure that comes to this, and I like that it was open and available for him to do. Again, I don't. I mean, I think you're right from that standpoint of if they do a part two, his story is kind of done, and someone
Yeah.
else picks it up. But we can imply, you know,
Yeah, it's almost like, do we make it his Akiko his daughter? Do we make it his one of his grandchildren? Do you make it a completely different character that just seeks out the war hero who took down Godzilla? You know, because I'm sure after this he's getting fame for it
yeah,
in this world. But yeah, he's again one of the best written characters. I think he definitely deserves some kind of award for his acting.
yeah,
Um, and something we haven't gotten to talk about as much that I want to give like a very quick shout out to.
hmm,
The music in this film
yes,
is phenomenal. And
yes,
if that doesn't get some sort of recognition somewhere
it has
major,
to.
that's just a crime.
It has to. It's it's one of those you put on in the car, you listen to it, you put it over some of your social media posts. Very similar to the song that a lot of people use from Oppenheimer. This has that and more. I think top to bottom. And the original score, the music, the moments, the techniques, everything that they use, whether it be visual, whether it be written, whether it be audio, the actors, just this. Every piece of this movie makes you feel and elicits some sort of fairly strong emotion, expected or not.
Yeah.
And this movie will make you feel things that you really did not expect going into it. And I've watched tons of reviews going into this. People are like, movie of the year, movie of the year, movie of the year. They can tell you why, but you don't really grasp or understand why that is until you go and see it for yourself, or you somehow get a chance to watch it at home. I think there's a
Yeah.
few days left at the time of recording. I think we
Yeah.
have a couple nights that it's going to be on. I think Wednesday
I think
is when
Thursday in my area
it's
is the
Thursday.
last day. Yeah.
Uh,
Watch
it,
this.
yeah,
Watch this. I know and I think we've done a very good job of hyping it up and breaking down the aspects that we really love about this movie, but it doesn't do it justice until you watch it. Like, this is something we can talk to you for ages about. We could go for heck another hour probably.
yeah,
But unless you watch this, you don't get that feeling. You can see the clips, you can see the atomic scene, and probably think, "Oh, well, I don't need to see this anymore. I saw the big action scenes." No, you need the context of everything. You need these characters' journeys. You need to see Godzilla's journey in this to really get that sense of fear and everything else that the director has really set out to portray and feel.
yeah.
This is a special movie, and we were talking about this before. Easily the best Godzilla movie, without a doubt. It's without a doubt one of, if not the best movies of the year. No questions asked.
No.
The conversation I think we need to be having, and I think people overall need to be having, where does this rank in all-time storytelling movie? And
It, it,
it'll be high.
it'll be very high. The exploration of foundational concepts in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, to just really summarize how I feel about the Godzilla aspect of this is you you don't know what real power is. You think you know what real power is, but you don't.
Yeah.
And from the human aspect, it's really a true sense of sacrifice. What is it take? What is it going to take to do something for people you love and for yourself? I don't know of any other movies that have all these elements wrapped up in a beautiful bow,
No.
delivered in such a fantastic presentation for a foreign film that is dominating the box office, that is dominating social media, that's dominating in so many ways that are so unexpected and so welcome in 2023. It is this hour is not done it justice.
No.
Like, go see it.
And we could talk about it again for another 2, 3, 4 hours. not gonna do it justice either way.
No.
You have to see this.
Yeah.
Have to. This is must watch because this is an experience. Everybody, that has been another episode of the Point 3 podcast. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, every Wednesday is our live stream Wednesdays, 9:05 Eastern Standard Time. We talk news, do a deep dive on a topic. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. We really appreciate it. We're at the time of recording close to 50, which is really nice. So we can get over that. That'd be awesome. Follow us on our social medias. But everybody, watch Godzilla, please. Watch
Yes.
Godzilla -1. It's a good time to be a Godzilla fan overall. But until the next one, everybody, keep watching, keep reading, keep nerding out.